Halfway through, Can't Help Falling in Love, Elvis paused. The spotlight caught a boy in the front row, gripping a cardboard sign with shaking hands. His lips moved, but no words came. Witnesses recall the king lowering his mic, eyes locked on that small, struggling voice. If you've ever seen kindness change a moment forever, you'll want to stay with me, because what Elvis does next still echoes in the hearts of thousands. The music was smooth, steady, and then it stopped. In the middle of Can't Help Falling in Love, the king froze, one hand still on the mic, the other hovering in the air. His eyes had locked on something just beyond the footlights. In the amber haze of the showroom, mid-1970s Las Vegas, a boy no older than 9 sat in the front row. His feet didn't reach the floor. In both hands he clutched a piece of cardboard. The letters, uneven but bold in black marker, read, "Elvis, can I say hello?" His mother's hand rested lightly on his shoulder, as if to steady him against the crush of sound and light. Witnesses say you could hear the rustle of programs in that pause. The air was heavy with the smell of stage smoke and perfume. A thin thread of guitar amp hiss lingered in the silence. Elvis tilted his head. The spotlight shifted, catching the boy's face. He was pale, lips moving, but no sound came out. The king lowered his mic toward him. A single syllable escaped, split in half. A stutter. It was small, fragile, but in the quiet, it landed like a note in the wrong key. The boy's eyes darted down to his lap. He gripped the cardboard tighter, knuckles whitening. A ripple of sympathy moved through the front rows. People leaned in without realizing it, drawn toward this moment that didn't belong on a set list. Elvis took one slow step forward, then another. His white jumpsuit caught the light with each movement, a sharp glint against the deep red of the stage curtain. Somewhere in the balcony, someone whispered, "What's he doing?" The boy swallowed hard, tried again, another word breaking apart before it reached his lips. Elvis's expression softened. The corners of his mouth curved into a small grin, not mocking, encouraging. From the stage edge, he studied the boy like there was no one else in the room. Some say you could feel the whole crowd holding its breath. The band stayed frozen, instruments in hand, waiting for the signal that never came. Elvis leaned slightly forward, as if weighing his next move. His right boot tapped once on the wooden stage, then stilled. The boy looked up just enough for their eyes to meet. And in that split second, before anyone could guess what would happen next, Elvis made his choice. Elvis raised one hand. The band's volume dropped instantly, from velvet croon to barely a heartbeat of sound. He stepped off the stage. Security moved first, instinctively forming a path, their dark jackets cutting through the dim aisle light. Some in the audience leaned into the glow of the spotlight, craning to see. The boy's sign wavered in his hands. His lips pressed tight. His eyes darted down at his sneakers, scuffed and small beneath the chair. Witnesses recall the scent of cologne trailing behind Elvis, the faint musk of leather from his boots. The rhinestones on his white jumpsuit scattered the stage light across the room like tiny flashbulbs. Every step he took was slow, deliberate. By the time he reached the first row, the air felt heavier, as if the entire showroom was holding the same breath. Elvis crouched down, resting one knee against the carpeted step. The boy's gaze flicked up, just for a second, then back to the floor. "Take your time, son," Elvis said quietly. The words weren't loud, but a nearby mic caught them, sending them gently over the speakers. They weren't a command, they were permission. The boy's chest rose and fell. He opened his mouth. The first sound broke apart before it was even formed. His shoulders curled inward. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd, not impatience, but shared ache. Elvis didn't move away. He simply shifted closer, his forearm resting on the stage edge. One hand reached out and wrapped around the boy's smaller one. It wasn't a tight grip, just enough to say, "You're safe here." The boy blinked rapidly, his other hand still clutching the cardboard sign like a lifeline. A camera flash went off somewhere behind them. Someone sniffled in the balcony. Elvis asked something then, but no one around them could quite hear it. His head tilted toward the boy's ear, voice so low it was meant for him alone. The boy paused, listened, and then nodded. The expression on Elvis's face didn't change much, just the slightest lift at one corner of his mouth, the kind that says good. The boy's lips parted again. This time no sound came yet, but something in his shoulders shifted, straighter. From the stage, a backup singer tilted her head, waiting. The drummer adjusted his sticks in slow motion. Elvis gave the boy's hand one last squeeze. "Ready?" he asked. The boy didn't speak, but he nodded again, more firmly this time. Some in the audience leaned forward, so far their programs nearly slipped from their laps. The spotlight seemed to narrow. The room was silent enough to hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. Elvis lifted the mic back toward the boy, just close enough to catch whatever might come next. And as the boy drew in a breath, the kind you take before leaping into something you've feared your whole life, everything hung in the air. The boy's breath trembled as it left him. For a heartbeat, nothing followed. Then a single word, small, fragile, clear, high. It was barely more than a whisper, but the showroom reacted as if the roof had opened. The first rows erupted in applause. A cheer swelled from the back, rolling forward in a wave. The boy's eyes widened, startled by the noise. Elvis grinned wide, warm, and laughed softly. It wasn't mockery. It was the laugh of someone who just heard the bravest word of the night. Elvis tipped the mic toward him again. The boy hesitated. His mouth moved once, twice, and then the words came, halting, stumbling but unmistakable. People who had never met the boy or the man were suddenly on their feet. Elvis nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the boy's. He reached up, pulled a long silk scarf from around his neck, and draped it gently over the boy's shoulders. "You're mine tonight, buddy," he said into the mic. The boy's lips twitched toward a smile, the first of the evening. Elvis looked over his shoulder at the band, holding up one finger. It wasn't the cue to start, it was a pause. He turned back to the boy. "You sing?" he asked quietly, tilting his head. The boy's mouth opened, then closed again. A nervous glance to his mother. She nodded quickly, eyes glassy. Elvis leaned in closer. "Just one line. With me." The boy's small hands gripped the scarf, feeling its soft weave. His chest rose. He nodded. The stage lights seemed to warm around them, focusing in tight. A backup singer shifted on her stool, ready to step in if needed. From somewhere off to the side, a camera lens zoomed in, the click of the shutter, muffled by the crowd's quiet anticipation. Elvis stepped back half a pace, still crouched low enough to stay eye level. His voice, deep and rich, wrapped around the first few words of a song the whole room knew by heart. "Love me tender." He stopped. The boy's turn. A breath, a note, shaky but pure. "Love me true." The line was short, but it landed. A swell of cheers rose again, this time sharper, louder. The boy's smile deepened. Elvis laughed, the sound more relief than amusement, and gave his shoulder a gentle pat. The boy looked taller somehow, as if that one line had stretched him. The music was still on pause, the show still off script. But in that pause, something had shifted, not just for the boy, but for everyone watching. Elvis leaned in once more, murmured something the boy would never repeat, and stood. The scarf glimmered under the lights as the boy clutched it, and as Elvis turned toward the band, raising his hand to signal the next move, the night was far from over. The first gentle strum came from somewhere behind them, a single guitar line, slow, steady. Elvis didn't rush. He gave the boy a moment to breathe, to settle into the scarf draped across his shoulders. He turned toward the band and spoke just two words, "Love me tender." The arrangement was stripped bare. No brass, no heavy rhythm, just a low hum of strings and the faint hiss of the overhead speakers. Elvis sang the opening line himself, smooth, certain. His voice filled the room without drowning the air. Then he leaned the mic toward the boy. The boy's throat moved once before sound came. His voice was higher, softer, but it carried, thin and trembling, to the farthest seats. "Love me true." For half a beat there was silence. Then the applause broke, sharp and quick, like an exhale everyone had been holding. The boy's lips pulled into a real smile. Elvis didn't move away. He stayed crouched beside him, the mic steady, his eyes fixed on the boy like there was nowhere else to look. When the line ended, Elvis slid seamlessly into the next verse, his baritone wrapped around the melody, safe and warm. The boy mouthed the words now, not into the mic but quietly to himself, a private duet inside the public one. Somewhere in the crowd, a man wiped his eyes with the edge of his program. A woman near the bar clasped her hands together. As the song reached its final line, Elvis finished alone, the note lingering in the rafters, fading into the hush that followed. The audience didn't wait long. They surged to their feet, a wall of applause crashing forward. Elvis reached up, removed his gold-rimmed sunglasses, and looked down at them for a moment. Then he bent and slid them gently into the boy's hand. No words, just a look, the kind you remember longer than the gift itself. The boy's small fingers curled around the glasses. His eyes shone under the lights. A security guard off to the side would later say, "I saw the kid stand taller right there." Elvis placed a final pat on the boy's shoulder, stood and walked him back toward his seat. The boy glanced up at him with each step, like he couldn't quite believe this was still happening. When they reached the front row, Elvis gave one last smile before returning to the stage. The crowd kept cheering long after he'd taken his place again. But for all the scarves, the song, the sunglasses, what came a week later would mean even more to that boy than anything he'd taken home that night. 7 days later, The boy was home. The scarf was folded neatly on his dresser. The gold-rimmed sunglasses rested in a shoebox, away from curious hands. It was late afternoon when the doorbell rang. His mother opened the door to find a plain cardboard package, no return address, just his name written in careful block letters. She called him over. The boy hurried in, socks sliding on the linoleum, his small hands tugging at the tape. Inside, under a layer of brown paper, was a guitar. Not full-size, a small child's instrument, its wood a warm honey color. The strings were fresh, still carrying the faint metallic scent of new wire. Tucked under the bridge was a folded piece of stationery. He opened it. In neat, slanted handwriting, it read, "You'll always have a seat in the front row. Keep singing, E." His mother pressed a hand to her mouth. The boy just stared at the words, reading them again and again. Witnesses later recalled that from that day on, he carried the guitar almost everywhere. To the park, to his grandparents' house, even to the corner store. At school, something changed. He still stuttered sometimes, but not like before. When he spoke about music, the words came easier. His voice was steadier. During recess, he sat under the shade of the old oak, picking out the opening notes of Love Me Tender, with slow, careful fingers. His teacher would later say, it was like he'd been given permission to be heard. Neighbors noticed too. He bloomed, one recalled, like someone had finally told him he mattered. At night, he practiced until his fingertips were sore. The scarf stayed close, draped over the back of his chair, brushing his arm each time he reached for a chord. Sometimes, he'd place the sunglasses on the table in front of him, as if they were watching, urging him on. It wasn't just about the guitar. It was about what it meant, that one of the most famous men in the world had stopped everything. The music, the show, the momentum, just to make space for his voice. The package didn't come with a certificate, or a photo. It didn't need to. Every time his fingers wrapped around that neck, he remembered the night the spotlight found him, the night the king knelt down and said, "Take your time," and though he didn't know it yet, the memory of that night, and the gift that followed, would stay with him for decades. Because sometimes, a moment on stage is only the beginning. Years passed. The guitar's wood had darkened with time, its finish worn smooth, where small fingers once learned their first chords. The silk scarf had faded slightly, but it still carried the faint scent of cologne. The boy, now a man, stood backstage at a small tribute concert. The crowd outside was nothing like Vegas in the 70s, but the hum was familiar. Murmurs, the soft thud of stagehands moving gear, the warm hiss of amplifiers waiting to come alive. When he stepped out, the spotlight hit him in a way that pulled him back across decades. The scarf hung loosely around his neck. The same guitar rested in his hands. He adjusted the mic, cleared his throat, and smiled at the audience. "I want to tell you a story," he began. His voice was steady now, strong. "When I was 9 years old, I sat in the front row at an Elvis show. The room quieted instantly. He told them about the cardboard sign, the trembling hands, the stutter, about the moment the music stopped, and the king himself walked toward him. He didn't just hear me, he said. He made the world hear me." Heads in the audience nodded slowly. A woman dabbed at her eyes. Someone in the back whispered, "I remember hearing about that." He talked about the scarf, the song, the sunglasses, and then about the package that arrived a week later, the guitar he was holding now. "This," he said, running a hand gently over the worn fretboard, "reminded me every day that my voice mattered." He strummed the opening chords to Love Me Tender. His voice carried the melody easily. No tremor, no hesitation. In the front row, a little girl sat on the edge of her seat, eyes locked on him. Her hands clutched a folded piece of paper, a sign of her own. He smiled at her between verses, and for a second it was like looking in a mirror across time. The song ended. The applause rose and fell, warm and lingering. Before stepping off stage, he left the mic with one last thought. "Kindness isn't always about grand gestures," he said. "Sometimes it's stopping the world for a moment, so someone else can speak." The spotlight dimmed. Backstage, he leaned the guitar against a chair, the scarf draped over it. The single beam of light from above caught them both, just as it had all those years ago. One quiet act of kindness can echo through an entire lifetime. If this moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can change a life. What's the smallest act of kindness you've seen that made the biggest difference?